Hey everybody and welcome. Today I'm making another spread in that smaller art journal with a Distress ink background. I so enjoy making these pages because I love how the Distress inks are working in this journal and I love the size of it. I think it's just perfect. I'm starting the page with some background stamping, so there is already something going on the page. I think that's always nice. Sometimes these things get covered up, I don't mind that, and very often they shine through the background and give you some interests here and there. I'm using a waterproof ink for that background stamping because I want to go on top with the Distress inks and I don't want to get that smearing and bleeding in. And I'm using the Versafine Clear or the StayZone. I think it's the StayZone ink. It does not really matter. StayZone is the ink that dries the quickest, so it's always nice when you want to keep on working. And the stamps I'm using are from our Mix It Up stamp sets. I'm using different ones. I think it was the number 4 and the number 6, but I will link up all the products I'm using in the video description. I'm now going to do some ink blending on the background, and I'm starting with the Fossilized Amber Distress ink. My brush was not perfectly clean, but I wanted to create an autumnal art journal spread, and so I didn't mind because it was kind of a brownish reddish color. I didn't mind that this is going to mix in a bit with the Fossilized Amber. It gives a really lovely warm yellowish tone, and that's perfect for an autumnal spread. The brushes I'm using are makeup brushes usually, and I bought them years ago on Amazon. I really like them for ink blending, but you have to take care that you keep the colors separated so you do not dirty up the brushes. I did not take care of that very well, but now I started marking them so I know which brush is for which color. I also would not recommend mixing inks and oxides because of the oxide part in the oxide inks. It's very dominant and it will mute your distress ink probably when you are mixing them up in the brush. I sometimes get asked why I'm mixing Distress inks with oxides, and the reason is the Distress inks are transparent and they are vibrant and bright. The oxides are more opaque and they are more muted. They do not shine as bright, and I have the feeling using only oxides is very boring because everything is quite matte and flat and not shining. And I love to combine them because you can layer oxides over Distress inks, and that gives you a more depth in your work. And it's also just nice because the contrast is higher, and I love the texture you can get with the oxides. I am now going in with another color. It's the One Lipstick. It's one of my favorite colors. I usually am not a super pink fan, but this pinkish red is such a lovely color. I really like that one. I'm quite happy with the background. I left a little bit of light in the middle because I really like when you have some contrast going on in the background, then it also gives you more depth and interest. In my next step, I wanted to create some pattern or texture with the stencil, and I've just unwrapped the Sketchy Leaves number 4 stencil. I'm using a new one today because I have just one here that's quite dirty already and has a lot of acrylic paint on it, and I want to have one that I'm going to keep clean, and Distress inks can be easily washed away with some water. I'm using Distress Oxide in peeled paint, and I'm applying it also with one of the makeup brushes through the stencil. And here you can see what the difference is between the oxides and the distress inks. The oxides are more opaque and they layer up. And once they are dry, they get this oxidized effect, which gets even more intense when you're using water. But they will dry more muted. It will not stay as vibrant as it looks at this stage. And that's why I don't like the oxides on their own. I always like to mix them with the distress inks. Once I'm done with the ink blending, I'm going to spritz my page with a little bit of water using that spray bottle, and I just try to create some bigger droplets, and this will activate the ink and will give you some really interesting textures on the background. And while my background is drying, I'm going to color in my focal images, which are some mushrooms from our Textured Mushrooms #2 stamp set, and they are embossed with clear powder, and I've stamped them in black. Usually when I use embossing in black, I use a black ink pad with clear powder, and I use the VersaFine Clear, which works quite nice for embossing because it stays wet for a little while. To ink the stamps, I'm using the Distress Inks, and I just press the lid onto the stamp pad a little bit, and then you have some ink on the inside of the lid that you can then use to color in your images, and I'm using a water brush for that. I'm not very good in coloring in stamped images beautifully, and I cannot create these lovely cartoony looking images that some people are able to do. I think a lot of use alcohol inks or alcohol markers to color in stamped images, but I just can't do it. I tried it and I don't have the patience, and I think, I don't know, I'm just not able to do it very nice, and then I always keep it loose. So it's also pretty and easy. And yeah, what you also can do, you can just stamp your ink pad to your working surface if it's non-porous, such as mine, which is a glass plate, and then you can pick up the ink from there to color in your images. If you are enjoying today's video, it would be really lovely if you leave a thumbs up and leave a lovely comment. I always enjoy reading them. I do not always have the time to answer, but usually when I have some time, I come back to all the comments and then answer them. But I always read them, so that's easy with the YouTube Studio app. You just can read the comments easily. But I think it's really hard to type on my mobile phone. I don't know how this is with you, but usually I make a mistake with every word because my finger hits the wrong button. And I just do not enjoy typing on my phone, so I prefer to do this on my desk. And then I usually come to all the comments once in a while and just answer them on my desk. I'm also using the oxide ink for coloring in the stamps because this will also dry a bit more muted, and it will be just perfect for the mushrooms. My page is dry, and here you can see the texture it got from the oxide inks. My pages are bent a little, and I just try to make them more flat again. But I really love the highlights you can create by splattering in water to the distress background. I'm now going to think about how I want to lay out my page and where I want to put my mushrooms, and which other ephemera pieces I want to use. I decided to use the autumn leaf stamps to create kind of a leafy frame at the top of the page, so it gets that autumnal feel, and I really like how these are turning out. I'm using the same inks that I've used for the background. Well, not all. This is the aged mahogany, but it's a reddish color, so I do not stamp in black here. I just stamp in colors that I have already on the page. And on the left side, I laid a piece of foam under my page because there is something going on already in this book, and that makes it a bit bulky and uneven. And with the foam, I make sure that I have a good base to stamp on. This stamp set is one I made last year, and I made it from leaves I picked up in the garden, and then I printed them. And this is limited, so once this stamp set is gone, we will not reorder it, but maybe I will make a new version of it or a different version with other leaves for the next autumn. I don't know. I will see how things are going. And I often create stamp sets because I'm in that creative mood. And sometimes I'm also a little bit late for the season because I come in an autumnal mood when it gets autumn, but then it's almost too late to bring some autumnal stamps. So that's something I have to work on. I have cut out my mushrooms, and here I have some tickets that I stamped in the past, and I'm seeing if they will fit the page as kind of a little bit of a collage cluster in the background, so the mushrooms have something to sit on. These tickets are also stamps from different sets, and I stamped them to colored paper and then cut them out. And I think in my, not in my last video, but in one of my last videos, I made some more with this vintagey feel, and they are always useful, I think, if you need something on your project. And here you see me playing around with the elements. I'm thinking about what to add and where to add. I think I'm going to add a sentiment between these green papers to connect them. Maybe usually I always come to a point where I start gluing down elements. I do not want to overthink everything. I usually lay something out and then I think, yeah, that might fit, and I will start gluing down, and then I'm going to decide which else I'm going to add and where. For the mushrooms, I'm using a liquid glue, a craft glue from Craftelier, because they are on kind of a heavyweight paper, and then it holds more quickly to the spread. And I really like that glue pen. It's wonderful. You can refill it, and I'm so happy that I picked that up with the Craftelier haul I was able to do some month ago, and it's linked in the video description. Yes, and that is my finished page. The only thing I did off camera is I added some words with our Mix a Sentiment stamp set. It's 10% off during November, so don't miss that. and maybe you want to watch some other videos. And I hope you enjoyed this one, and we will see us next time. Bye!